Hey everybody, it's Mark again, and this is a cuckoo clock that I gave my sister for Christmas about 3 years ago now, and it probably, um, in somebody's opinion, might have needed a bushing or two, but this is 3 years later. It's a one-day musical cuckoo clock, and I tell people all the time that you do not have to put bushings in a one-day cuckoo clock. They're very lenient on bushing, on pivot wear. Now, some people who are against my YouTube videos will say that if you're going to service a cuckoo clock, that you need to take the movement apart and that you need to put bushings in, and I disagree. There are some people out there who want to tell a customer that this clock movement needs to be replaced, that it needs bushings, and it's a waste of their time to put bushings in a clock, so therefore purchase a new movement. And that depends on the clock, on what you do to it. If it's a famous maker like a East Meckenbecker cuckoo clock, or a Schoen cuckoo clock, or a cuckoo clock that's very desirable, I personally would not want a movement that does not have their name on the movement. One-day cuckoo clocks are very lenient on bushing wear. So 3 years later, this clock is still up and running. I have repaired clocks for people who have taken it to a professional clock person and paid $170 for, and didn't even run a week. I repaired the clock, and the thing is still running about 3 years later. So I know people who, I know a very good friend of mine who has health issues, shakes a lot. He does not take the movements apart. He uses professional grade cleaning solution in his ultrasonic cleaner. It shines up the movement really well. I tell people in my YouTube videos that you should take the movement apart, but I am the admin for two different groups, and there's a guy in the group that just recently started taking movements apart, and he has about 30 or so cuckoo clocks that prior to him taking this, he has never taken them apart. He dips them in his cleaning solution. He puts them in beat as per my videos. And again, per my videos, I tell you that you take the pendulum off, get the pendulum leader to swinging back and forth. And if you could do that after you touch it and you stick your finger right there with the pendulum leader, and if it bounces off your finger, you should be able to put the pendulum on, put it swinging, because the clock is in beat. And so for those people who are saying bad things about my YouTube videos, you need to stop it. You need to get a life. You need to quit telling people that the only way to service a clock is to put a bushings in, to take it apart, to put bushings in. And I disagree with what you're saying. There are people in my group who work professionally, repair clocks professionally for a living, who tell me that they rarely put bushings in a cuckoo clock. The cuckoo clocks are very lenient. They're like American made movements where you have to have some slop in the uh, 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 pivot holes for them to work. 1 day cuckoo clocks are extremely lenient. 8 day cuckoo clocks, on the other hand, because of the power, because of the weight, because of the extra gear, you typically have to put a bushing in the escapement wheel and the wheel next to the escapement wheel. If there's too much slop in those two wheels, the clock will not run. And again, 3 years later, this clock is still ticking away. As you can hear, it's not quite in beat but it is ticking away. And I just came to my sister's house and wanted to show off this clock that I gave her 3 years ago, but it still runs. And she just got it in the wall crooked. I need to adjust it real fast. Stand by. It sounds quite a bit better, but again, you don't have to put bushings in a 1 day cuckoo clock. You know, people are, not everybody can afford to purchase a brand new movement. Not everybody could afford to pay you so much money per bushing to put in a cuckoo clock. A cuckoo clock, a 1 day cuckoo clock, is very lenient and will run for several years on pivot wear. Should you put bushings in a clock? That really depends on the clock. And that really depends on how much a customer wants to spend. But, if personally, I have over 100 cuckoo clocks, and 1 day cuckoo clocks, I've never, except for one clock, it had too much pivot wear in the escapement wheel. Out of all my clocks, I've only put bushings in one day cuckoo clock. I am the administrator for 2 different groups on Facebook. This group right here, which I created it because I left a couple of groups because there's some people that were complaining about me helping people and posting videos. So I left the group and I created my own group. If you want to join this group, you can search for it, but you have to answer all the questions when it comes up, because we don't just let everybody in the group. If you don't answer the questions, you will not be able to join. This group I took over from a friend of mine. It deals just with cuckoo clocks and all things Black Forest. Again, there are questions that you have to answer or you will not be able to join the group. We do not allow automatic acceptance. You have to answer the questions, and then it's up to myself and the moderators to determine whether or not you're not somebody who would not be good for the group. We do not let people who are on here to sell stupid things and scammers. One person stole t-shirt and said that it was his autistic son that developed these shirt designs, which was a lie. It's one of my members in the group, Seth Lingfelter, who's a member of both of the groups that I'm the admin for. So if you want to join this group, you have to answer all the questions, and then we determine whether or not you would fit in the group. Here is one of my group experts in the group who works on clocks for a living, Bruce Weeks. He's been repairing clocks for a few years. And he comments, and I quote, "Rarely do I have to bush a cuckoo clock. They like it much looser than even an American kitchen clocks will tolerate, and in fact, won't run if you do bush them as tight as you would a kitchen. But it seems I've been doing it more the last 5 years for some unknown reason." And again, he repairs clocks for a living. And so for those people who say you have to put bushings in a cuckoo clock, I wouldn't totally agree with what they're saying. For the people who say this movement is worn out and I need to purchase another movement, I wouldn't totally agree with what they're saying. And for people who complaining about my YouTube videos, about me posting them, and how I don't know what I'm talking about, why on earth would I accept a friend request from those people? God only knows, but why in God's green earth would I accept a friend request from somebody who keeps saying negative things about my YouTube videos and my comments and how I don't know what I'm talking about? Good luck with me accepting a friend request. I hope y'all enjoyed this video. This video was not intended to cuss anybody out. It was not intended to rag on anybody. The point of this video is you don't have to always put bushings in a clock, and I would not be changing out movements in a well-known maker clock. If you take a East Meckenbecker church clock that is worth between around $700, I've seen them go as far as $700. If you put a different movement in that clock, you're depreciating the value of that clock because you're taking the name East Meckenbecker off the movement. If you are putting a different movement in a East Meckenbecker farmer's daughter's clock, which I have seen go sell on eBay as much as $800, you're depreciating the value of that clock. I would not want a different movement in that clock. Take the time. If the pivot wear is too much where the clock will not run, if you cannot get it in beat, then yes, take the movement apart, put some bushings in. But I highly recommend that you take a movement apart. I don't care what anybody is saying to you. I tell people all the time, it is best to take the movement apart because the ultrasonic cleaner is just like a dishwasher. It will not reach the hard-to-reach spots. Take the movement apart. Can you get away with not taking the movement apart? Yes, but I do recommend that you take the movement apart and clean it properly.